All right, hello everyone and welcome. I hope everyone is doing well today. And I'm just gonna chat for a little bit to make sure that everyone can hear me okay before I get started. Hello, Sam T06. Awesome. You've never heard of Microsoft and blockchain. I think that's Sidroid. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm going to take that as a yes for now and maybe just go ahead and get started. I'm monitoring the chat, so y'all can tell me if you do not hear me. But welcome again. My name is Meaghan Lewis, and I am a technical program manager at Microsoft. I am a content developer, and I kind of focus on emerging technologies, which is really broad, but I am a blockchain enthusiast. And if you tuned in yesterday, you heard and saw our first stream focused on blockchain for the week. So we're doing a lot of blockchain this week. So this is the second stream. And it's kind of a continuation from yesterday, where yesterday we did a tour of 3 different blockchain solutions that Microsoft, specifically Azure, provides. That was the Blockchain Development Toolkit, Azure Blockchain Service, and Azure Blockchain Workbench. So today I'm going to be doing more of a deeper dive into blockchain workbench. Azure Blockchain Service in particular. We're going to be looking at some of the same things that we saw yesterday, but looking at a little deeper, different ways to kind of interact with the blockchain service. And I will not really be covering any blockchain foundational principles. So Sidroid, you said that you've never heard of Microsoft and blockchain. I'm not really going to get into any of that. I will point out before I get started, if you are interested in catching any of the past streams and talks that the Microsoft Reactor team has done, you can check out that link at youtube.com/Microsoft Reactor. There's also a bunch of different events that we have going on this week, all featured around blockchain. So I sent the link in the chat for our meetup group for Microsoft Reactor. And every day this week, we're offering a bunch of different events focused around blockchain. So if you're not part of the meetup, definitely check that out and see if any of those events interest you around blockchain or anything else. I think that's probably enough of the primer for now. I'll go ahead and kind of just jump into the agenda to kick things off more. So, all right, you should be able to see the agenda now. And so what I'm going to be covering first is just going to start with kind of the overview of Azure Blockchain Service. We're going to go through a step to, one of the possible steps to create a member. I'm going to be deploying to Azure Blockchain Service, exploring Consortium Management, and publishing to Data Manager. So that is a little bit of everything that we're going to do today. This is the agenda that I plan to follow. We'll see kind of what comes up, if there are any other questions or things that kind of lead us away from this path, but this is what I'm planning to do. Go back one. All right, so just for the overview of Azure Blockchain Service, what is it? It provides these 4 features and more, but I think these are kind of the high level features and the selling points of Azure Blockchain Service. You have your monitoring and logging, security and maintenance. You can manage your consortium members, and you can publish blockchain data. So these are kind of the key features, in particular that draw people to Azure Blockchain Service, and then what I'm going to be covering. So once you have created an Azure Blockchain Service member, you go to this overview dashboard. And this is kind of the view that you see coming in. So straight off the bat, you see different dashboards for blocks, transactions, pending transactions, lots of different data just initially. So you can kind of get that high level overview of how your blockchain network is performing. And in terms of security, I really like this architecture diagram because you can kind of see how all of these Azure Blockchain Service resources are isolated in a private virtual network. So inside of this Azure Virtual Network, you have your blockchain transaction node, your validator node, you have Azure Storage, and so that's all self-contained within this private network. And this really ensures security in your blockchain data. So, you know, the alternative, if you were to try to set this up on your own, you would kind of have to worry about how you are going to maintain security on your network, how you're going to keep your blockchain data safe. So it's nice to be able to rely on Azure to kind of provide that security, and also just to provide all of the infrastructure for you, so you don't have to kind of worry about setting up and maintaining infrastructure on your own. And then in terms of consortium management, so when I'm talking about a consortium, I'm talking about a private blockchain network where we are allowed to very much manage the membership for who's allowed to participate in the blockchain. So only people that are invited can participate in the network. Here in this picture, you see that there can be two different types of roles. You will either have your administrators, they're in the orange, or you can have the members who are in the blue. So administrators can manage the consortium, so they can kind of control who's coming and going, and they can assign different roles or privileges, whereas members can just be participants in the blockchain. They don't kind of have that admin privilege. But this is a little bit about how, this is a little bit of a representation of what a consortium might be like. It can be individuals, most of those are individuals. It can be some kind of supplier or manufacturer also. And for Blockchain Data Manager, this is something that we're going to spend some time exploring today. And with Blockchain Data Manager, what you can do is capture, transform, and deliver data. So you start kind of at the transaction node, and we'll explore all of that, but you're sending data, you're sending your blockchain network data to this transaction node, which gets passed into a Blockchain Data Manager. And then you can send that through an event grid. And the event grid is essentially just listening for events at this particular endpoint. So any and all events that happen on the blockchain are going to be captured in this event grid. And we'll also take a look at that. And then you can choose to integrate that with different off-chain applications and data stores. So you see all those options over to the right here, service bus functions, automation, and so on. So it's a nice option to be able to integrate with these off-chain applications, especially when you're working with smart contracts, especially when they're dealing with asset transfers, and you have your blockchain and your smart contracts to kind of facilitate how all of that works, and then you can kind of monitor that and pass your events through the event grid, and then kind of choose to act on those state changes that the contracts create, and kind of do something to kind of complete that process of the asset transfer. So that is a little bit about how Data Manager works, and I might come back to this later as we are actually exploring the Data Manager, but that is a little bit about it for now. So let me go ahead and transition over to my browser for now. Cool, and of course, feel free to ask questions and chat with me, so I'm not just talking to myself for an hour. If there's anything that y'all want to see, just let me know. Okay, let's go ahead and start here. Right off the bat, I'm probably just going to start at this REST API for blockchain members. Let me go up to the overview actually. And this is the Azure Blockchain REST API. As you can see, I can drop a quick link to that in here if anyone wants to explore this. But I'm covering this for a couple different reasons. Number one, I want to show that there is a different way, another way than we showed in the last stream, that you can actually create Azure Blockchain members. You can choose to use the portal, you can choose to use the command line interface or the REST API. So I think just like most services in Azure, there are choices and kind of you can choose your preference for how you want to get things done and to interact with services. I'm also showing this because it is August API month here at Microsoft, so I thought it would be cool just to kind of highlight the API and let folks know that this is here. So let's start to play around with creating a blockchain member. All right, so I'm taken to this blockchain members group, and I want to look at specifically this operation to create a blockchain member. So this page starts out by showing me the put URL request here. I also see the URI parameters that I can use, the request body, and the request body, there are tons of different options that you can specify. I won't go through all those quite yet, but we'll see them in a little bit. And there are responses here. What I'm looking for when I'm using this create API is the 201 created response. And then if I scroll down even more, I get to this section of examples. So for these examples, this is a really nice way just to see and kind of get an idea for what JSON body parameters that I actually need to specify. And so I can kind of see just a taste of them here. I think up there we saw over 20 different parameters that we can specify in the request body. But let me just go ahead and try this out. To go ahead and start creating my own blockchain member. And so what's really nice is I just click this try it feature here in the browser. And this opens up a nice interface for me to try out this API call directly in the browser. I could have used another tool like Postman or written some other application to actually facilitate this API call, but it's nice that I can try it directly in the browser. So for now, let me just go ahead and paste that body there. I'm going to come back to it. I have previously created a resource group. So let me go and grab that resource group because I don't quite remember it right now. So in my resource groups, I'm going to be using, let's go ahead and use the MLB group. That was not actually so hard to remember. And then I want to go ahead and give this blockchain member a name. So let's say for the purposes of this, I can say that this is Meaghan blockchain member. And I can select the subscription that I want to use. So I've already previously created a subscription and a resource group, as you saw in the Azure portal, and I'll go over to that after this. Down here, I want to specify the JSON body. So I'm going to choose the region that is closer to me. Let's go ahead and say East US. There are different properties here. There's this validator node SKU. So I do have to specify the SKU. There are two different tiers of Azure Blockchain Service that you can use. There's the basic tier, which will typically just have one validator node, and then there's the standard tier, which is for more production level use cases. And I do not need to use that for now. So I'm actually just going to change this up and just specify the SKU with the name, with the name of BO. Or B0 to say that this is going to be that basic tier that I want to create. The protocol is Quorum, and that's just the standard protocol that Azure Blockchain Service uses. I have a password, I have a consortium name. We can just call that consortium for now. I have a Consortium Management account password, and I think that should be enough. So there were a lot of different body parameters that I could specify, but this should be enough to get us started. And we'll see if it's not actually. So I can run this here. It'll just take a moment. And then I see that I do get a 201, and that 201 did indicate, oh, I can't see this over here, that this was successful. So as the JSON body response, I get a little bit more details, which includes all of those different properties that I didn't specify, but this is just a nice way to kind of see all the details about my Azure Blockchain member here. Something else that I want to show is just one more API endpoint. Let's go ahead and look at the list, because this should be able to get all of my blockchain members for a given resource group. So let's go ahead and try this out. And my resource name group was here, specifying the subscription. And that's all I need, since this is just a GET request. And what I get back will be that 200 response. And here I can just see all of the Azure Blockchain Service members that I have created. So just a quick and easy way, if I want to be able to see what I have, what members that I already have created, it's just nice to know that this exists. And it's kind of another way, again, to kind of interact with the Azure Blockchain Service and take me outside of the portal. So now let me go ahead and hop over to the portal. Actually, I'm going to check if there are any questions. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into Azure Blockchain Service. And you will notice that I had just created this member here, this third one. So that is brand new. You'll see that it's updating, which kind of means that it's still provisioning. And for some reason, these two are also updating, which I don't think should be the case, but that's what they look like. So let's go ahead and take a look into this marketplace demo. Oh, no, I do not want to delete. All right, so let's go ahead. There we go. It looks better. And I'm just going to kind of explore around here for now. Make sure it's big enough. I'm going to close this. So again, I showed this in the slides, and you might have seen this before if you're familiar with Azure Blockchain Service, but you come in here right off the bat, you can see lots of different information about your blocks, transactions, pending transactions, handled request. I'm looking at just data for the past 6 hours. I can kind of expand and just get a better overview of whatever it is that I'm looking at. And I'll notice over time that just this is going to continue to kind of change and expand. I just started running this maybe earlier today as I was preparing for this demo, but we already have about maybe 746 blocks going already. And I can even sort of drill down into what's going on in each of these different dashboards and just get a better view. I can kind of play around and add some filters, kind of depending on what it is that I'm looking for in particular. And then there's a whole other options for monitoring over here, whether I want to set alerts to kind of monitor whatever it is. There's a lot of different alerts that I can set up. So let me just take a quick look at this. I'm not actually going to set up any alerts, but it is helpful just to kind of understand what's here. So there's all kind of conditions that I can look for in terms of if I want to set a condition for maybe my CPU usage percentage is getting too high, or if I do want to look at the amount of blocks that are processed and I want to know over time, how many have processed. If they pass a certain threshold, I can just go ahead and get alerts about that. So again, just really cool that you can kind of set up all of this monitoring and kind of alerts to, be notified of any action that's happening on your blockchain network. So let's go ahead and explore the consortium bit a little bit. Let's go there next. So for now, I am the only member in this consortium, and in a real life case, of course, that doesn't make any sense. I'm going to want to do business with other people, whether that's, in my company or I'm working with kind of third-party suppliers. I want to make sure that I can invite them to my network. So right now, you can do consortium management through PowerShell. So I can kind of quickly show how that works. And if you were watching the previous stream, you saw Kel mention and heard Kel mention that right now this is done through PowerShell, but probably soon you'll be able to do this directly from the Azure Blockchain Service portal and invite people here, or there's probably going to be an API for that, or you can do it from the command line or something. But for now, we are going to use PowerShell. And if you are anything like me, you might not be super familiar with PowerShell. So luckily, there's very good documentation around all of this. And kind of similar to before, you can copy, you can try it directly from here to just kind of get familiar with these different commandlets that you have to enter to manage your consortium from the command line. So I'm just going to do a couple things while I'm here. The first is to establish this Web3 connection to my blockchain service member endpoint. So let me go ahead and do that. And the different parameters that I have to specify here are for connection, for the member account, and for the contract connection. So I didn't show those on the previous page, but those are basically all on the home page of the Azure Blockchain Service. So I can get the root contract address, the member account, and then the other one was the RPC endpoint, which I can copy from my transaction node. So I did already copy that to save some time. So let me go ahead and copy those over. And back in the portal, I'm going to open up the Azure Cloud Shell up here in the toolbar. I can just press that button. That's the quickest way to kind of get this done. And I'm using PowerShell by default. I can also use Bash if I like. And after I connect to the Azure Cloud Shell, I can just go ahead and paste over those Web3 connection commandlets that I had previously created. And we should be good to go there. So then after that, I can go ahead and send a new blockchain member invitation. So I'm going to reference this example here, and all I have to do is basically copy this commandlet again. I have to enter in the subscription ID of whatever the member's subscription ID that I want to invite. I can specify a role, which would be user here, and a Web3 account, which I had already just specified as that member account in the previous step. So what I can do here, and I previously copied the subscription ID that I want to use as well, is just go ahead and paste that in here. And something about that did not work. So I mean, I think that's also a good thing. Anytime I've tried this out, there is good documentation here about what exactly is going on. Could not decrypt key with given password. Okay, that's helpful. Not sure exactly what's going on there, but make sure you are a consortium administrator, which I should be. So let's go and double check that. I am an admin, so that should be good. The subscription ID is that of the member that I want to invite. Okay, that's a little weird. Function, let's try one more thing. Can I invite an admin? Not quite. All right, let me try this again. So let's go ahead and copy this. And I'm going to try one more time. And then if it doesn't work, we will come back to it. Ideally, it should be that easy. If you just know the subscription ID of the person that you want to invite, all you have to do is use their subscription ID. And when they sign up, they can easily join the consortium and start to access the blockchain network themselves. So let me try one more time. All right, and I am not sure exactly what I'm doing wrong here. So I think, oh, I did lose something. Well, that's good. So then the error message updated, that's still better. And that did not work, unfortunately. All right, so I'm gonna move on and come back to this. Sorry, y'all. The the next thing that I want to start to look at, I'm going to step away from Azure Blockchain Service for just a moment as I kind of explore the contracts that I'm working with for this example. And I want to show off how to deploy these contracts. So what we've done in the past and what I've done in the past is kind of stick to using VS Code. And in the previous stream, we had showed off the blockchain development kit extension, and it's really easy there to kind of just connect to an Azure Blockchain Service instance to deploy. But today what I'd like to do is, again, something a little bit different, just to kind of, again, show that there are many options to do this and different tools that allow you to kind of do the same thing, but there is flexibility here. So what I am showing off, and let me go ahead to the home page. So what I'm showing off here is the Remix IDE. And if you want to try Remix out, you can go to remix.ethereum.org. And what Remix is a really nice, powerful open source tool that helps you write Solidity contracts. So you can use this straight from the browser. You can use this locally. I think the really nice thing and convenient thing about using the browser is that you can pretty much just get started instantly, right? I just came here, I didn't have to log in or anything, and I can just start writing Solidity contracts. There is also this other option here to use Viper, and Viper is a contract-oriented programming language that targets the Ethereum virtual machine. I'm not super familiar with Viper, but that is just another option just to let you know that that exists. There's a bunch of different featured plugins here that you can use as well to really just kind of integrate with your smart contracts, whether that is kind of like all the ones that you see here. I can integrate with like some decentralized app plugins and more. So there's a lot of cool functionality that I can have in here. I can also just import files directly from a number of services. But right off the bat, when I go to the File Explorer, in case you were trying to enter in that link, there you go, remix.ethereum.org. And yeah, try it out, because go here immediately. And what you should be able to see is you get three contracts, a storage, an owner, and a ballot. There's also a simple test that you get. And this is super helpful. Number one, just to kind of understand a little bit more about Solidity, the typical structure of a contract. The contract that we're going to be going over today in particular, just so you can get a little bit more familiar with that, is the simple marketplace. So if you've seen my blockchain service member is called Marketplace Demo, that's what the point is here. So there are two roles for this simple application. And let me go ahead and paste also the link to where you can find this demo, the code for this demo. So there is two roles. You have a buyer and a seller. There are two events for this contract. Either the contract is created or updated, and I see that here. There are various state variables that kind of describe the owner, different information about the item for sale. This constructor, which sets some initial values for the when the contract is created. This also emits the contract created event. And then there are three different functions down here. So there's the make offer function, which takes in an offer price. This needs to be called by the buyer. And then there is the reject and the accept offer function. So these functions will happen after an offer is made on an item. And the seller can come in and be able to accept or reject the offer on their item. So that's kind of the basics of this contract. And I went ahead and opened up the compiler over here on the left-hand side. And what I can do is just choose to compile. And since this is the contract that was selected, I can easily go ahead and compile from here. And that should just take a moment. Essentially, this green check indicates that that was successful. There you go. And if I move down to this next tab, I can see that I can deploy and run transactions. So by default, you'll notice up here that there is, if you don't see where I'm pointing, it's this environment variable in the top left. It's the JavaScript VM. So this is kind of the default option that you get, where all of the transactions are executed in this sandbox blockchain environment in the browser. So this is really nice because you can kind of just start deploying and testing things out, because you do get a set of accounts here with a set amount of Ether to play around with. I've kind of exhausted some of that for the other earlier accounts, but if I could select one of those accounts and then I go to deploy it. You'll notice down here at the bottom of the browser window on the left-hand side that I immediately got those deployed contracts, and I see all the functions that I can interact with here, as well as all the different state variables. I should also open up the console window down here. This is helpful to start to get an idea of how the transactions and blocks are being processed in this network. So at the very bottom of the page, I might have to pull this up a little bit more. What you can see here is that I see that this block was created, and I just made a call to the constructor. I can see different information about this block, the transaction hash, the from and to address, and all kinds of other information about this particular block. So it's nice that you kind of get this all in one again. What I'd like to show next, so what I was just showing was using this kind of sandboxed environment that we get by default. I want to show the other options that are available here. So this injected Web3 provider is what we're going to use to actually connect to a crypto wallet, Metamask, which I'll introduce in one moment. And then we can use Metamask to connect directly to our blockchain service member. So this injected Web3 provider is basically just going to allow me to connect to a remote node that I provided via URL. So you don't see that happening here. You'll notice that it updated my account. So now let me switch over to my other browser actually. And what I'm seeing here is Metamask. So Metamask is a really neat, smart crypto wallet rather that I can access in the browser. It's nice just because it's super easy to get started. There's lots of different networks that you can connect to. So if you see this here, there's the main Ethereum network, there's different test networks that I can access, as well as a local host if I like. And then I can have a custom RPC. So this custom RPC is going to allow me to basically enter a URL to connect to, or endpoint to connect to. And if I go into the settings and I go down to networks, what I have specified here is this RPC URL. So I previously specified that. But where I got that from, I'm going to go back over to the portal, and here I have this transaction node. And if I look in the transaction node, so the transaction node is the node that is helping to process transactions on the blockchain network. I have a lot of information about this node. What I want to look for is the connection string. So this is that RPC endpoint essentially that I'm looking for. There's lots of different access keys here, or just these two for HTTPS. So all I did was copy this first one, either the first or the second are fine. And I just went ahead and added that here. So what this does is create that connection to my transaction node. And then I set that connection into Remix. So essentially, I'm kind of creating this connection through Metamask to be able to communicate with my Azure Blockchain Service transaction node. So what I want to do here, I already previously deployed just to kind of that local sandbox blockchain environment. If I were to deploy again, what happens is that Metamask will pop open this new window for me. And I see that this is a contract deployment that is happening. The way that I have configured this is to not use any gas. So I just set the gas price to 0 for this situation. And let's just go ahead and confirm that. And then what I see here is a history of deployments and actions that have happened. So it was pending for just a moment. And now what I'll be able to see is information about that transaction. And then if I go back to Remix IDE, I'll also be able to see that that new block was created here. And I'll see that this was another call to the simple marketplace constructor, that this was a successful execution, and different information about that block. So all I'm trying to show here is that this is a really nice way to kind of create this connection between this smart contract running in my browser through Azure Blockchain Service transaction node. So I kind of already set up this deployment, and now what's happening is I want to show how you can use the data manager to capture the blockchain data. So what we're going to see is lots of this that we're seeing kind of locally in Remix. We're going to see all of that in Azure itself, and I'll talk about the benefits of that shortly. All right. Let me check if there are any questions. So to use this contract in Azure, you would need to use the workbench. No, and I don't know if that question was just answered. I don't need to use the workbench. I was just showing this is one of the ways that you can deploy your contracts to blockchain service. Another alternative would to be using VS Code, for example, using the Blockchain Development Kit extension. But you don't have to use Workbench in particular to use the contracts. This is just one way that I'm showing. I think the nice thing here that I'm seeing, and that might be similar to Workbench, is kind of just like this visualization of how I can actually interact with my deployed contracts. And I guess I didn't really clearly show that, but I can kind of start to play around with these functions here. And what's happening in the background is that Metamask is asking me if I want to approve this contract interaction, and very shortly you should see it pop up here, a new block that shows that this offer was accepted. And very soon I'll show you how all that looks in Azure Blockchain Service, and that's where I'll try to spend the rest of the time. So let's see. You mentioned that the setup was configured to not use gas, but the transaction showed gas usage. How is that configured? That is a good question. It's configured to not use gas because this account that I'm using doesn't have any Ethereum, so I just can't use gas. You'll see that there was a gas limit that was specified in gas used, but the gas price was 0. So essentially, I'm just not being charged for anything. 0 times the gas used is just going to be 0. And I don't have to actually configure or add any money here, but I could always add money here if that's something that I chose to do. I think the nice thing, and I'll just kind of point this out, is that if I am using kind of like a local host, for example, is that I can use kind of just the test accounts that are here. I don't know if this is actually going to work right now, but you kind of could see that from before. And every time I make a change in Metamask, it reloads the Remix IDE. But you can kind of see that before when I was looking at this and just using the JavaScript VM, that I just kind of get all these accounts by default. So I'm not really connected to Metamask here. I'm just using some Remix wallet, and I have all these accounts by default. But in this account, I do not want to spend real money. So let's go ahead and focus on Azure Blockchain Service now, and how we can capture this ledger data that we're getting through Data Manager, the Blockchain Data Manager. And I have a couple different ones. I think I was using this marketplace demo. So let's talk about the Blockchain Data Manager. And here I have just added a new blockchain data manager. So when I just had to enter a name, a transaction node. I just have this one transaction node running, and then I set this outbound connection. So let me try to show what that looks like. So I just, by setting up the data manager, have configured this outbound connection. And if I click into that, you'll notice that my outbound connection is for Cosmos DB. And this is just the name. And I gave it this name because I want to eventually send my data from the data manager through the event grid to Cosmos DB. And you'll notice that I have this marketplace endpoint. So I've previously configured this event grid, and I set up basically this endpoint that is capturing all of the events that are being passed through it through the data manager. And I can show what that looks like because I think that that will be helpful just to kind of see the intermediate step of what's happening. So if I open this, I'm actually not seeing anything here. What I should see here, what I expected to see here was pretty much similar to what I was seeing in Remix. I should see kind of a list of transactions. Oh, there's one. Okay, I don't know where these are coming from. But so what I should see here is very similar to what I was seeing in Remix, like I was mentioning before. So this is capturing block 1028, and probably if I look back in Remix, we're going to be around 1028. We're at 1031, if you see that at the very bottom of my screen. So what's cool is I just kind of connected this event grid to feed in data from my transaction node, and that's what I'm starting to see here. So the next step that I want to do is go back over, and I want to configure this blockchain application. And this is just like kind of the input to the data manager that we need to create. So for this blockchain application, I'm just going to give it a name. And I need a link to the contract ABI and the contract bytecode. So the easiest way to get these APIs and bytecodes are from the VS Code extension, actually. There is another option where if you go through Remix, I can see that here after I compile the contracts as well. If I go down to the bottom of the page, I have an ABI and a bytecode that are generated from this contract. The thing is that I'm going to need to close some of these tabs. The thing is that for this, we have to enter a URL for this ABI and bytecode. So I previously had to set up some storage to do that. So if you'll excuse me, I'm going to open up another tab, but then I'll close it soon after. And what I have is a storage account that's coming. And in this storage account, what I previously did was create this container, and I uploaded that ABI and bytecode file. So I can go ahead and select that here. And what's really nice about Azure Storage is I can generate this nice token and URL here for me to use. So I can copy that over for the contract ABI. And then I'm going to copy also for the bytecode. And going back over to my blockchain data manager, I've copied that in, so I should be good to go there. So I'm going to say OK. Cool, and that should have been pretty quick. So what I want to do is go back over to the overview, and you'll notice now that this blockchain application is kind of the input to my data manager that I'm configuring, kind of just feeding it all of the information that it needs to know about my contracts and the way that they're set up. And I have this outbound configuration, which has the endpoint to my event grid, and also is how I'm going to kind of start to then go from here to sending data on to my Cosmos DB. So let's go ahead and do that now. And this will all come together very shortly, and we'll get to see another view of what I'm talking about. So what I want to do is create a quick logic app. Let me go ahead and add a new one. I have to select the same resource group. I want all of these resources to be grouped together. That's the same region. That looks great. So let me go ahead and create this. Cool. So that just takes a moment. And then I'll go to this resource. And all that I want to do here is I'm going to create a super quick logic app. And in the next stream that is on Thursday morning, we're going to explore this a little bit more in detail, but I'm just going to create a super quick logic app here so we can kind of describe what to do when we're getting in data into the event grid and we want to pass that on to our Cosmos DB. So what I'm looking for here is event grid. Azure Event Grid. And there are these triggers that I have to specify. I only have this one option for a trigger. So when a resource event occurs is the one I want to select. And this is pretty nice because I could actually just kind of select from the drop-down the values that I want to specify. I have set up an event grid topic previously, and I am using the demo. And that should be all I need for here. And the next step, I want to say when a resource event occurs, all I want to do is go ahead and pass this on to Cosmos DB, which I should find shortly. And I want to be able to create a new document every time a new event occurs. So there's going to be a lot of events here. And I can just select the database information from the database that I previously created. I actually should confirm that this is the right database. 1 second. Change connection. Let's go ahead and add a new one. And I want to use this demo. Marketplace demo DB. So let's create the connection from that. Cool. So it's still the same database ID, the same collection, the document. So here I'm specifying the document to create. Sorry, it's a little hard to see that. Hopefully that's better. And what I want to specify is an expression. So here what I'm going to say, I want to add a property, trigger body, and specify the data. Just 1 minute, and then I will explain all this. All right, so what this is going to do for me is just create a new document with the timestamp for now. Making sure I closed all those params. Okay, so okay, and then that will enter the property in for me there. And then I want to enter a partition key value. And for this, I can just type in a value. That's also going to be the trigger body. I was hoping for some autocomplete here. Trigger body. Okay, I think that looks fine. So basically this is just going to create the partition key values based on these message types. And if I press enter, oh, is that right? There we go. It should look like that. The boxes around it means that it is correct essentially. So now we should have everything we need. So just to recap, I'm saying that when a resource event occurs through my event grid, what I want to do is create or update a document into the Cosmos DB database that I have set up. So I'm going to save this and it should be pretty instant, but let's see. So the save of the logic app was complete. I'm going to go back to the demo app. No runs yet. Let me go ahead and temporarily go over to the IDE again, and I'm going to try to just do another deploy from here. And Metamask popped up and asked me if I want to do this deploy. And so now I see that it's pending and that should be successful any moment. I see that that new block was created. So let's go see if we have any runs now. All right, so this is still in the context of the Logic app, but there's lots of places to see this data. So let me just start here quickly. And when I expand this, what I should be able to see is the document that I'm actually creating. So that corresponds to the block that we just saw being created in Remix IDE. And I see all of the information about that here. It's a little tight to see, but that's okay. I'll also show it in Cosmos DB. So if I go home and let's go over to Cosmos DB, as you see in this top one. And the way that I look at this is through the Data Explorer and blockchain data. And from there, I can have a look at all of the items that have been created. So here is probably one of the earlier blocks. I think that they're going in, they're in ascending order right now. But yeah, this is just a nice way to kind of see that same information here. So what I'm doing is using my event grid to pass data coming through my blockchain network through the data manager event grid, and then that data ends up in my Cosmos DB. And again, the kind of nice thing about doing this and the point of doing all this is when you need to get your data off chain. So when there are different state changes happening, so in our case, you say, this was the marketplace, so after I sold an item, I want the state to be changed to accept offer, and then I need to kind of know what to do with this information next. How I'm actually going to integrate this information with some other applications so I can know how to kind of complete the transaction and make sure that I can know that this was accepted and kind of facilitate that transaction and complete that. The one thing that I'll point out here is it's a little bit hard to know what's going on. I see the raw block and transaction data, but I'm not seeing in particular any of the, it's hard to just look at this and know exactly what's happening on. I think in the Remix IDE, what we saw was the decoded contract information. So we saw specifically, you know, what function was called and what happened here. It's a little bit harder to get that information just right off the bat. So there's probably more transformation that I'm going to want to do after this to go ahead and pass on that data. I think that's probably about it where I'll stop today. Let me go ahead and share some resources though, if folks want to be able to try this out on their own. The one thing that I should do before leaving here actually, and just a best practice is what I recommend, is just to make sure you're going ahead and deleting your resource group. So before I forget, let me do that now. Since it's kind of just for testing, I don't need this for any production purposes. I don't want to just leave this up and running. So let me delete that. And let me share some resources and see if there are any questions. All right, so on my screen, you should be able to see a list of resources, and this was all of the resources that I ended up using today. So if any of this was not super clear and you're just kind of wanting to go through it all on your own at a different pace, I recommend checking out any of these resources. I will upload this somewhere, but feel free to take a screenshot or something if you need to. In addition to that, I just also wanted to share other resources, so not particular to Azure Blockchain Service, but I shared a link here to our docs where you can just see more about all of the different solutions for blockchain that Azure provides. There is a nice Learn module up. So Learn is our online learning platform, and there's kind of a nice intro to blockchain module there that you can go through that's self-paced, as well as Block Talk, which is the blockchain talk show that we put on here at Microsoft. So that is just another option for you to kind of go and check out more. And I think that's about it. If there are no questions. Sorry about that. My audio was not on, I realized. So I was just saying, thank you all for joining today. I hope that you all at least learned something new and were able to explore a little bit more. If you do look right under my face right now, under here, you can go to that link, aka.ms/Azure Blockchain Solutions, and at least there I do have more resources that you can go and check out there if you didn't catch them on the slide before. And before I go, I'll also share the survey data if you want to take a minute just to fill out a little quick survey about how this event went. So yeah, that's it. I'll hang out for a few moments, and thanks.